Hello everybody, Flair aka Flairy here, coming right back at you with a Fireside Flair vlog. I have once again snagged a totally abandoned classroom to record this because I really don't want you all to hear the random shenanigans that go down in my residence hall. Trust me, you really don't want to hear them. But this is going to be a bit on the longer side since I have a crap ton to talk about. Thanks to everyone who suggested topics and gave me some feedback. I really want to get this series going good, and so please keep it up. I enjoy it. First off, a new member named Luna Rose suggested that I should add some screenshots of the site to the video, and I'll be happy to do so just so you guys can see what we look like and what we're about. So a person on the forums, Nanamine or Nananime or however you pronounce it, actually gave me some feedback and asked if he could hear the whole plan and what we're going to do, and which is all right. I don't mind doing that. I'll talk about what I think should happen and how I feel about it and things like that. And I'll talk about what I can for right now. I don't want to give away too much information because Star Force has an extremely huge pet peeve about leaking information, rightly so. And so I don't want to accidentally give away too much. So one of our polls going around is if we should just scrap all accounts upon transferring to this new Zen 4.0 system, or if we should just scrap the inactive accounts and keep the active ones. Currently, the poll is showing that we should scrap inactive accounts and keep active ones. Now, personally, I think we should just scrap all accounts and start completely new. This is the quote-unquote freshest option in my opinion. There are ramifications to this, both negative and positive. Logically, if we scrap all accounts, then everything attached to those accounts would also be scrapped. For those of you who aren't technologically savvy, most forums use a database or databases of some sort to track almost everything that is attached to a user, a thread or a forum or anything like that. So what I had in mind, at least when we were drafting this plan, is that if we don't carry over any accounts, we'd have to carry over some of the threads ourselves, like rules, Pokemon rules, some of the threads like post your current thoughts and things like that. And obviously these will be blank threads with no posts but the OP. And with how most databases work, and why most forums generally don't delete accounts is because this can be troublesome, especially if the user has a post or a blog attached to them. Most databases have rules called constraints in place that prevent you from disastrously messing them up. And one of these constraints is that a post or a blog or something can't belong to a null user or someone who doesn't exist. So let's say our site owner, who knows way more about database stuff than I do, Star Force, was extremely pissed at me. And like I sent him a picture of a roadkill duck, and he just decided to delete my account because he was angry. And most likely the database would say something like, oh, hell no. Excuse you, sir. You can't be doing that because Flairy has like 5,000 posts, and they can't be just belonging to somebody who don't be existing. You stupid. Don't be trying anything. I will stomp the yard on your body. So that's why it makes more sense to me, rather than have Star Force and our other site developer, Hello to You, who, for those of you who aren't members, to just plop over some threads rather than have to finagle with the database and transferring user data over. As much as people would like to carry over as much as possible with them, what with their site history and whatnot, I'm just erring on the side of practicality. The less those two have to do, the better and faster this transfer can go, and which is how the plan was drafted at first, because Star Force and Hello to You are most likely going to be doing the heavy, if not all the lifting. So at first, I made the draft with the intention that we were going to start with bare bones, like no meat on the bones whatsoever. And like on the first draft, we were going to be scrapping accounts and everything and literally starting from scratch. But we got into a debate about it, and we just decided to let the community decide if we should do it or not. Of course, I also like the concept of just starting off with a completely blank slate, but that's just me. Now, in terms of how the staff are going to be upon this transfer, there's another poll on the forums asking if we should keep the staff how it is, or if we should make them generalized and keep them generalized, or if we should generalize them at first and then specialize them later, like go back to the way they were before later, if the new forums actually pick up. And right now, the poll is showing that most of the community wants to generalize them first and specialize them later. Now, the plan itself was actually going to call for a lot more specialization than how the staff already were. Like, where mods would be responsible for certain sections of the site, event staff would only be doing certain categories of events, like casual competitive events, things like that. Which I don't think is a highly which I don't think. I actually think it's a highly efficient model. Now, obviously, we don't have nearly enough staff members to actually do that yet, but hopefully we'll get there at some point. I myself am open to the idea just for the sake of trying it. Like, I mean, I can be pretty stubborn. I'm as stubborn as a mule, okay? I'm pretty much set in my ways. It just inevitably happens as you get experience in pretty much anything, and it just happens as you get older. So at first I was pretty much totally against it. In fact, I probably still am, but if the poll goes through and we do actually generalize staff, I won't be too disappointed. I mean, it's a vote, it's a fair contest, and besides, if the generalization thing doesn't work out, I can always go, ha ha, you all were wrong and I was right. As usual, I don't know why you people would even think I could ever be wrong. Nah, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't actually say that. But if we do generalize staff, how I see it happening is that we're still going to have a mod team that's a sub-branch of staff that just does mod things. But every other staff member will be generalized. They'll still do what they do best in the background. Like events people will still be doing events, and graphics people will still be doing graphics. But they'll just need to be available to do some other extra menial work or something, like maybe write an article or two, maybe host an occasional event. And instead of events leader or graphics leader, there's just going to be staff leaders. And for mods, there will be site administrators. And managers will probably just be doing the same things they've been always doing, which is being awesome, apparently. So thanks for the feedback, Nanamine. I hope that sufficiently covered the topic. If you want me to indulge you a bit more, just hit me up. So Ultra Bronut wanted me to talk about House Eon, the fan fiction I did when I was but a wee laddie on the site. And sure, I can talk about that. So what House Eon was essentially a story about a rescue team, like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon kind of thing. And they're pretty much a family of Eevee evolutions, the Eon family, aka House Eon, that's why they're called House Eon. And the characters were basically from oldest to youngest: Lester, a Leafeon; Sapphire, a shiny Glaceon; Copper, a regular Eevee; Nocturne, who's an Umbreon; Lumina, who's an Espeon; Agua, a Vaporeon; Kilovolt, the Jolteon; and Flair, the Flareon. And those are the main characters anyway. So to give a bit of background on the characters, Lester is what you would typically think of a Leafeon. He's 42 years old, and he's nice and brave and chivalrous, and he's a pacifist, and he's always looking on the bright side of things, and he's always calm and collected, and all that good stuff. And all of his siblings look up to him as a well-respected and strong leader, and he's a hero and all that good stuff. And Sapphire is the sassy one who don't take crap from anybody. She's a strong, independent, shiny Glaceon, and she don't need no man. She's actually 40, and she's the diva of the group, and so she sings and she dances, and she's a celebrity, but she also has a very short fuse, and hits like 1,000 trucks in combat. And Nocturne is like the super blunt, realistic, pessimistic one who's like antisocial, and he's a grouch to everyone and everything. But deep down, he actually wants to be a great leader like Lester. And he's 32, and he tells it like it is, probably way too much like it is, and which always leads to Sapphire beating him in the face. So anyway, Lumina is like the semi-ditzy, preppy, girly girl one, and like whenever I do her dialogue, I have to remember to add an incessantly unnecessary amount of likes and totallys to her dialogue, because that's how preppy girls act, or at least that's what I've observed. And if I recall correctly, she's like 27, I think. And she also combs her fur way too much, and she hates getting dirty, and she freaks out over broken nails and messed up fur and all that good stuff. And she's also a fashion designer, so she like has her own line of clothing and stuff. And which means free clothes for her family. I mean, that's awesome. And Agua is pretty much Metroid Other M Samus with actual emotions. So like she's monotone, but like if she's angry, you can tell she's angry. And she's not super expressive about herself, and she's actually a bit on the quiet side. And she's a doctor slash dentist slash psychologist who has a PhD in all three of those. So she's like obviously super smart, and she's only 23. And Kilovolt is like this carefree, lazy rebel. I do what I want, smart alecky, kind of free spirited teenager. He's 19, and he's this like mega genius who's super good with computers and coding and science and math and all that good stuff. And he runs his own business called Kilocore because he's a narcissist, and all of his inventions have the word kilo in front of them. And unlike Agua, who actually went to college and graduated, he dropped out because he was too lazy and too smart, frankly, for college, and instead went to raves and frat parties all the time, which I don't recommend. And finally, we have Flair, who's like the youngest, and he's like 5 years old, so he's this innocent, naive, know-nothing who like thinks wine is magic juice or something, and he's still learning the ropes and everything, so he's not really there yet, but he has a lot of potential and stuff, and he's clumsy and scared of the dark, and general kid things. And finally again, there's Salvador, who's like the caretaker of the family, and he's a Chadot, and he's like the butler who's been with the family before Lester was even born. So he's pretty much like a second father to the Eons, and he's overprotective and overbearing and usually embarrassing them in some sort of fashion. But anyway, so with that sitcom cast out of the way, how the story originally played out was actually, let me just put this out there and say that their parents were dead. Like in the story, their parents are dead because Darkrai killed them. And Lester and Sapphire were coming back from a mission. And because I was in high school when I first conceived this, I actually had no idea about stuff like pacing and plot or anything like that. Everything was essentially just like a stream of consciousness and totally improvised. So, like, anyways, all of a sudden, a wild Mewtwo appears, and it just attacks them and it captures them. And so while this conflict is going down, Nocturne comes out in the midst of them being captured, and he's like, Lester, Sapphire. And so immediately he's just trying to attack Mewtwo, but Mewtwo is like brushing him off his shoulder, like, ha, 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 jump, and just overpowers him easily and slams him against the wall and just flies away with Lester and Sapphire in tow, while Nocturne's laying on the ground seeing stars. So after that, Nocturne rounds up the family and basically just goes on this adventure with the rest of his family to save Lester and Sapphire. And along the way, they meet Copper, who is actually separated from them, so he doesn't even know they're related until he like sees Nocturne and is reminded of him, because Nocturne was like 2 at around the time they got separated. And Copper's been living off the land for a while, and so he might have not had a shower. And Copper speaks nothing but Spanish, because I was big into Spanish class at the time. So I thought it would be funny if he's just this super narcissistic jerk who thinks he's the sexiest thing on earth and just constantly refers to his family as fat and stupid. So anyway, they managed to rescue Lester and Sapphire, but that's only because they escaped on their own. Like I have chapters showing Lester and Sapphire making an escape plan, and they just escape. And they meet up and they reach the final boss, who is Darkrai. I'm going to spoil it now. He's Darkrai. But Darkrai actually manages to like possess and take over Arceus, so he becomes Darkrius. Darkrius, like super cheesy name, but and he nearly defeats them all. He almost wipes them out completely, and that is until like Flair unlocks this mysterious power, like Gohan in like Dragon Ball Z, where he goes Super Saiyan 2 or something, and totally trounces Darkrius with some of the help of his family. And after that, Darkrai is banished, and Arceus, as thanks, brings back their mom and dad, and the story ends like that. And in House Eon 2, I actually introduced more characters. Like I introduced their mom and dad, and so like King Draco Eon, who's a Drakeon, and he's the patriarch, he's the dad, and he's the legendary Pokemon of war. So under Arceus, he's like one of the legendary Pokemon. And so he's very powerful and all that good stuff, and he's a god. And then there's Fantasia Eon, who's a Phantasmion. She's a ghost type, like Draco's a dragon type. And she's the matriarch, and she's the mom. And she's the legendary Pokemon of death, and that's just what she is under Arceus. And I also introduced Mosadad, the Meleon. I was actually going to go with Brawleon, but Melee is better than Brawl, obviously. And if you play FFTA 2, then you'll instantly recognize the name Mosadad because he's a Bangai Cannoneer. And Mosadad is Fantasia's father, and he's a master of every martial art. like all of them. But what I basically envisioned him as is that he's this super cranky, super old-fashioned Asian grandpa who like complains about everything, but if you say anything to him, he'll just like call it backsass and just like not even pay you any mind. But it's not racist, I swear. But I just wanted to have fun with the stereotype because the Eons are royalty. So I thought it would be hilarious to introduce a character who is like the complete opposite of them. And like in this one scene in House Eon 2, the kids, like Lester and all of them, they're not really kids, but they're stuck at Mosadad's dojo, which is in the underground. So it's like in a ghetto. And for dinner, Mosadad gives them water and rice. And this is obviously not the royal dinner that they're used to. So Nocturne speaks up and he's like, what is this? And Mosadad responds with, it's your dinner. You are in my house. You eat what I give you. Rice is good for you. You are all fat and spoiled. And I always eat steak. Rice help you lose weight. So Lumina is like, this totally isn't dinner. And so most of that just snaps. And he's like, what? I provide you meal and you backsass me? So he just jumps over the table and he doesn't spank them, which is what they would usually get. Instead, he gives like one of those 1970s style beatdowns that your parents are usually telling you about. And, the ones where they were like whipped with half a tree or something like that, or just whatever was in the vicinity at the time. But since Mosadad's this super strong martial arts master, his paws are pretty painful enough. And after that, they eat the rice without saying a word. But, that's just how Mosadad is. And another character I introduce is Ace Eon. And who's a Griffeon, so he's a flying type, and he's Draco's younger brother. And unlike Draco, who's like a king and basically an official Pokemon god, Ace is actually the Don of the Mafia, and he owns the one and only airship that exists in the world. So what Ace is this stereotypical Newtalian, and by Newtalian I mean guys from New York who think they're Italian because they have some sort of Italian accent, but they're really not Italian. So he's essentially what a Sky Pirate would be like in FF12, except he doesn't raid other airships. He just does like mafia, gangster, Godfather kind of things. But and then finally I introduced Lord Eon, who's Draco's father, Draco and Ace's father. And what Lord Eon is an Ouroborean. Remember, I was in high school at the time, so if these names are like super cheesy, I'm sorry. I'm just really attached to them. And anyways, what Lord Eon is basically what Arceus is times an immeasurable amount of infinity. And so like Arceus is the alpha, so Lord Eon would be the omega, and Lord Eon like was sealed in the basement of the Eon Palace, and he was unsealed by Flair, and bad things happened, and he almost got his revenge. Like he almost completely destroyed the world, and until Flair willpowered his way and somehow miraculously stalemated Lord Eon. And then after that, Lord Eon took Guile's advice and went home and became a family man. So, anywho, wow, super long vlog. I'm sorry if I just chattered your ear off. I don't want the links of these to be too wildly random. I'm actually going to wrap it up and maybe talk about my RP and what I'm doing with the Eons nowadays next time. So, once again, I'll put another blog linking to this video and asking for feedback and other topic suggestions. Hopefully it won't be like last time where I linked you to the completely wrong video and it just didn't work. Like the video was unavailable or something. I don't know if that has to do with YouTube's whole processing thing, but I'll try waiting a bit, then posting a blog, and then hopefully it will be better. So sorry if that happened to you. This is like the third time ever I've uploaded a video, so please bear with me for now. So anyways, you all have a flair-tastic day and a flair-tastic weekend, and I hope the Easter Bunny gives you all the candy and cavities that you enjoy. Ciao!